Hey guys, what's going on? I'm going to keep this brief. Basically, this video is just going to be a segment from a much bigger video where I rank every weapon in TF2 and gave a fun fact about them. Those videos were both over an hour long. My original idea was to combine them, sort of, but my editing software doesn't allow for anything over 2 hours, which is why it's a two-parter in the first place. It was meant to be a 3-hour video, and my PC is not powerful enough to stitch the two together, so instead, I am going to make a segment for every class. This will not replace the projects I am doing. I'm still working on major projects, and I plan on releasing those once a month, maybe every 2 months if it becomes too much. My plan is to release one of these every 20th of every month until we get through all 9 classes. So if you've seen the original video, there is no need to watch these unless you want to specifically see that class's stuff. I won't hold you any longer. Let's get into the video. Alright, a pretty uninteresting weapon is the stock bat. It was added on October 10th, 2007, with the release of the game. It's pretty underwhelming. With all the alternatives, with 1 or 2 exceptions being leagues above this weapon. This weapon is just, it's not good, Nobody runs the stock bat, and if they are running the stock bat, it's, the holy mackerel, the bat saber, the strange bat saber, or whatever. Nobody runs the stock bat unless they're brand new. In the original, I put this in the D tier, and I believe that's exactly where it's going to stay. It's uninteresting, it's not very good, there's so many better options. The atomizer, well, maybe not the Sandman anymore, but once upon a time, right? All of these weapons, they're just so much better. There's not much trivia on the bat because, it doesn't get change of stats. But the bat did receive new swing animations in 2008, so there's that. So on the list, we have the Babyface's Blaster, added June 27th, 2012. Upon release, it sucked, then it was kind of overpowered. Now it's arguably worse than it was on launch. This, unlike the Extinguisher, was not a fall from grace, but rather a rise to fame, then the fame kind of going to its head, and him ending back in the gutter again. In the original video, I put this in the F tier, and I believe that's exactly where it's going to stay. This weapon kind of sucks. I mean, come on. 25 damage to completely remove your boost is pretty ridiculous. Now for a piece of trivia, before the added 34% clip size penalty, it was the only scatter gun to hold 6 besides stock. Once that was changed, every single unlockable primary for Scout has a clip size penalty. Go ahead, try to think of one that doesn't, besides stock. Backscatter, added June 18th, 2014. This weapon is just really not that good. The accuracy penalty kills this weapon, to be honest. It's not bad on paper in concept, but it was just a really bad execution. I have never seen somebody unironically run this. Typically when anybody runs the backscatter, it's just kind of like, can I get it to work? There's just so many better options. The stock, of course, the shortstop, hell, even the force of nature, and of course the soda popper, are all better weapons than the backscatter is. The backscatter is kind of irrelevant. And actually, the first time I recorded this, I forgot to rank it. That's how irrelevant it is. Anyway, in the original video, I put this in the D tier, and I believe that's exactly where it belongs. It isn't as bad as the Babyface Blaster. I would much rather use the backscatter over that, but it's still pretty trash. And to just show how irrelevant this weapon is, I couldn't really find anything all that interesting on the backscatter, so I took this straight from the wiki. Trivia. The saddle magazine featured on the backscatter is based on a World War II era, whatever this is, magazine. I'll throw up a picture too, just so you can kind of compare the two. The Atomizer, released June 23rd, 2011. This weapon's good, there's not much to say. It's a great option for mobility and doing what the Scout does best, pestering people. In the original video, I put this in the B tier, and that is where it is going to stay for this video as well. Trivia. There isn't much interesting information about the Atomizer, but if you didn't know, on release, this weapon would subtract 10 health on jump, but it did not need to be deployed to do so. It could be equipped and completely forgotten about. Bonk Atomic Punch, released February 24th, 2009. This weapon is niche. It can be great for getting past Ventrias, but ever since the Jungle Inferno update where they added the slowdown, it just has not been the same. This weapon right here is a solid C tier weapon. Now a little piece of trivia, and it kind of ties back into what I was saying about it. So, like I stated, the Jungle Inferno update added a slowdown effect, and obviously it scales with the amount of damage that you take. So the less damage you take, the less slowdown effect you have. However, many might not know this, the slowdown effect isn't actually new. When the item originally released, it did reduce your movement speed by about half, regardless of the damage you take. So you could take no damage, or you could take 100 damage, 1000 damage, it doesn't really matter. It would slow you down anyway. This stat was removed in April of 2010. Asher, added December 17th, 2010. It's alright, forgettable. You're better off running the Candy Cane, Fan of War, or the God Sent Holy Mackerel. There's really no point of using this weapon unless you just want to mess around. It's a C tier weapon. Trivia. There really isn't anything interesting about this weapon, at least nothing I could find. Though, just so there's something, unlike other weapons with blood, the Boston Basher is not censored in countries like Germany that normally would censor blood. The Candy Cane, released December 17th, 2010. It's a viable scout melee. The weapon doesn't need to be deployed to drop medkits for you or your team, but watch out for Soldier and Demoman. There are better options, but this one is not bad if you want a simple plus-minus stat weapon. B tier. Trivia. There's nothing really interesting on the Candy Cane, as it hasn't gone through any stat changes. The only thing of interest that I could find is that it didn't have a distinct kill icon, instead using the stock bat icon. The Criticola, added April 28th, 2010. This weapon was uninteresting when it released. Then it became decent, then it became busted, and then it got buffed while already being overpowered. No scout didn't run this. Then it got nerfed and nerfed again. In its current state, it's alright. It's a good option if you're doing a solo mission. It's a great pair with a shortstop. If this was pre-patch, it would have been triple S tier. But post-patch, it's alright. B tier. Trivia. I think everybody knows this at this point, but maybe not. The Criticola was added in a random patch rather than being in an actual update. The Fan of War, added March 10th, 2011. A must-have for man vs. machine, marking giant robots, though in casual it's pretty much useless and not really worth using unless you're just kind of messing around. It would be S tier if this was an MVM ranking, but since we're ranking it based on casual, D tier. Fun fact, the Fan of War at one point had 90% damage penalty and didn't have the crits when it would normally mini-crit stat, which meant that you would only do 4 damage on a regular attack and 6 on a mini-crit. This would eventually be reduced to a 75% damage reduction, and it used to only mark enemies for death for 10 seconds, whereas now it's 15. The Flying Guillotine, added August 2nd, 2012. The Flying Guillotine is an interesting case. This weapon used to be one of the best combo weapons in the game when paired with the pre-patch Sandman. However, when the Sandman was changed, the Flying Guillotine lost its main combo function. It is still a good secondary and can be fun to run if you don't feel like using any support weapons. It can be good for doing high bursts of damage to finish an enemy off when they're at low health, but overall it's just kind of a whatever weapon now. C tier. Trivia. 1. The guillotine can be thrown through thin walls. 2. The combo I referred to earlier is in relation to the Sandman's old stun mechanic. The Flying Guillotine used to crit versus stunned enemies. It also used to mini-crit from afar, but now it simply just reduces your timer by 1.5 seconds, but the distance required for what's considered far range has been reduced. Finally, 3. All weapons in the game are technically automatic, except for one. At one time, this wasn't 100% true, but we'll get to that later. If you hold down mouse 1, the weapon will continue to fire, not needing to actually release the trigger. The guillotine is no different. If you hold down the trigger and wait for the recharge, as soon as the cleaver has replenished, you'll immediately throw it with no animation. The Force of Nature, added February 24th, 2009 in the Scout update. I like the Force of Nature. It has a high burst damage and knockback, which makes it very fun to use. Is it the best? No. Is it practical? Not really. The Soda Popper and the stock Scattergun are often better choices for dealing quick damage, but this weapon is still competitive if used correctly. B tier. Trivia. Fun fact, the range is required to knock someone back was brought inward, so that it acts more like air blast, as well as the minimum damage required to knock somebody back being 30. 2. The sound of the force of nature used is actually a scrap double-barrel shot the Scattergun was intended to have at one point. 3. Knockback to enemies is now only dealt by the first shot, rather than both, as of 2009. Specifically August of 2009. And this one I'm not too sure about. This one I got from the wiki. Most of these I kind of did a little digging for, but I'm not completely sure about this one. If you're an OG, definitely leave it down in the comments. Let me know. Apparently in 2009, the Force of Nature's damage was increased by 10%, but I was unable to find any supporting information for this. Mad Milk, added September 30th, 2010. The Mad Milk is one of those weapons that isn't just good in MVM, but in actual combat too. The Mad Milk is a great team support item, but can also be useful when you're just roaming around on your own, extinguishing yourself or teammates. A tier. Fun fact, the Mad Milk was released as part of the special delivery set, alongside the Shortstop, Holy Mackerel, and Milkman Cosmetic. Finding all these back in the day would grant the Scout plus 25 HP, bringing the Scout's base health up to 150. The weapon combo was also really good, which was a nice bonus. Now, if you run this set, it just leaves a calling card. In addition, the Mad Milk used to return 75% damage done as health, whereas now it's 60%, so it was even better then. The Pistol, added October 10, 2007 with the release of the game. The Pistol is just a nice, simple secondary. There are better options for both Scout and Engineer. Scout has things like the Mad Milk, Pretty Boy's Pocket Pistol, and Winger. Engineer has the Wrangler. Still not bad, just a whatever option. C tier. Trivia. Remember how on the Flying Guillotine trivia portion I talked about how every weapon was automatic except for one at one point? Yeah, it was this one. The pistol originally was not automatic. Holding down the pistol would fire really, really slowly. In order to get the max out of it, you would have to tap fire like a semi-automatic. This would be changed in 2009, so now it doesn't matter if you hold it down or you tap fire. The Pretty Boy's Pocket Pistol, added June 27th, 2012. The Pretty Boy's Pocket Pistol is most scouts' go-to secondary if they're not running the Mad Milk for team support or Winger for utility. The Pretty Boy's Pocket Pistol is the best for dealing with actual enemies. The firing speed bonus for dealing with mercs outside your scattergun range is nice, and the health on hit is just a cherry on top. A tier. Another history segment, so grab your popcorn, we're gonna have a chat. The Pretty Boy's Pocket Pistol was once a great weapon. Then it was a downright terrible one. Then it was less terrible, but still pretty bad. Then it was outright busted. And now it's just really good. The Pretty Boy's Pocket Pistol has had a tough time finding its identity. On release, the upsides were 15 max health on wearer, bringing up Scout's base health from 125 to 140, as well as the wearer never taking fall damage. The fall damage stat was to help when using the Babyface's blaster. You didn't lose boost when taking damage, but you would lose all your boosts when jumping. Not just double jumping, like just jumping in general. I didn't mention that in the BFB part, but I am here now. This was meant to make it so you didn't really have to jump in order to avoid fall damage. With the downsides of a 25% firing speed penalty, which is the opposite of what it is now, and a 50% fire vulnerability for some reason. The weapon would stay like this until Gunmetal. Gunmetal created a new rule where weapons must be visible at all times to grant a passive health bonus. So things like the Gunslinger and the original Darwin's Danger Shield got to keep their health bonuses. Since the Pretty Boy's Pocket Pistol wasn't visible at all times, it lost its stat. In return, it received a +3 health on hit. In addition, all passive bonuses were also changed to only being while active. This was the dark ages for the Pretty Boy's Pocket Pistol. Well, not completely. 5 months later, the number would be bumped up from 3 to 5. This didn't really fix the weapon, though. The Pretty Boy's Pocket Pistol was still pretty bad. The Pretty Boy's Pocket Pistol was no longer. But then, a little mass maniac needed a revamp, and this update fixed him. The Pretty Boy's Pocket Pistol was revived, and it was downright busted. They nearly wiped the board clean, increasing the HP on hit from 5 to 7, adding a firing speed bonus, removing the fall damage stat, and also obviously the slower firing speed because it now has a additional firing speed bonus, and changing the downsides to just being a clip reduction magazine reduction, from 12 to 9. This weapon was stupid good, doing what the Winger's original purpose was, and giving you health back. Of course, the Winger kind of got a new utility, we'll get to that later. This was short-lived. First, having the health scale on distance, rather than always giving you 7 regardless of distance, until finally they capped the health at 3. So now, with a full magazine, you can only get 27 health, rather than 63 health. Still a phenomenal weapon, though. Sandman, added February 24th, 2009. The Sandman in its current state is kind of a joke. It isn't unusable or anything like that, but a 15 health penalty so you could effectively do 15 damage from a slight range is not worth it in most scenarios. The slowdown hardly ever does enough to help the scout actually secure a kill. D tier. Trivia. I put in D tier now, but the weapon was once the bane of existence for most TF2 players around its release. It had 3 stats. Alt Fire, launches a ball that stuns opponents. No, not slows down, stuns. Not even like the Scream Fortress put into a scared animation and slowed. That wasn't until 2010. This weapon completely locked whoever was hit in place. What were the downsides for this massive upside? No double jump and a 50% damage penalty against stun players. The best part? It got patched the next day that removed the damage penalty. The Sandman was ridiculous on release. It doesn't even stop there. The Sandman was capable of stunning ubered enemies too. The saving grace for enemies was the fact that they had a 50% damage resistance when stunned, taking half damage from all sources, which was lowered to just 25% in 2009, August 2009. Though with that being said, the Sandman did receive its first nerfs. No longer stunned ubered players, which I don't even know why it could in the first place. That was a weird stat. I mean, it could be cool. It's like its own weapon, I guess. That's a completely different topic. And it also had its no double jump downside changed to a health penalty. 15? No. 30. When the health penalty was added, it took Scout's base health from 125 to just 95. In the War update, the stun mechanic would be changed to the one we're more familiar with, at least most of us, where it would put enemies into the fling animation and only full stun if you got a moonshot, which meant you had to hit them at very long range. January 6th of 2010 would be when the health penalty was changed to just 15, now bringing up the Sandman's health from 95 to 110. The weapon would stay like this for 7 years, before being absolutely decimated in the Jungle Inferno update, removing the stun mechanic and adding a slowing effect instead. It also changed some minor stats, but that didn't help. And another cool fact with the Sandman, if another scout hits you with the Sandman ball below the belt, you'll automatically pick it up. The Scattergun, added October 10th, 2007. The Scattergun is Scout's best primary when it comes to consistency. It holds the most in its magazine clip thing, it does consistent damage, has a consistent fire rate. It's just all around a great shotgun for new, intermediate, and veteran players alike. You can't go wrong. A tier. Trivia. I brought this up in the Force of Nature section in part 1, but just to refresh, there is code in the game files named scatter_gun_double_shoot.wob, suggesting that the scatter gun may have been planned to have a double barrel mechanic at some point. Maybe similar to the double barrel shotgun in TFC? I don't know. The sound file would eventually be repurposed and used for the Force of Nature. Shortstop, added September 30th, 2010. I talked a little about this weapon back in part 1. Well, specifically the set it was in. This was the primary for the Milkman set, which granted Scouts 25 extra health at one time. That's the past though. Currently this weapon is a little bit overlooked because of the Soda Popper's insane damage, and the Scattergun's general usability. But the Shortstop offers the ability to take people out from a slightly further range. Scout is usually up in people's business, but this thing takes a different approach, instead being more accurate, allowing for easier pickoffs. Not bad by any means, plus it has the shove mechanic, which is cool. Not really. B tier. Trivia. 1. The Shortstop used to have a ridiculous reload speed, being similar to the pistol at the time It was lowered by a whole 50%, and the shortstop still reloads decently quickly. So you could easily imagine how fast it was. In fact, I'd probably put a video on screen so you don't have to imagine, but yeah, it was pretty fast. 2. Many of you likely already know, it didn't release with this bonus, but July 10, 2013, this thing used to offer a 20% bonus health from health packs, before being changed to the shove mechanic we have now. Great trade-off. 3. The shortstop used to offer a knockback penalty. It always has. However, it's been halved twice, starting at 80%, which meant you were flung across the map by anything. Then it was lowered to 40% for a while, before being lowered to 20% in Meet Your Match. 4. The shortstop used to take from your secondary ammo rather than your primary ammo. The reason for this is probably because the COP 357 Derringer this weapon is based on, is a pistol. Though Valve likely realized this is a fictional game and they can do whatever they wanted, so they made it have its own ammo supply. Even in the old concept art for this weapon, it looks similar to the real-life counterpart. Put a picture of that on screen. Yeah, pretty neat. The Soda Popper, added June 23rd, 2011. The Soda Popper is often considered Scout's best scattergun for dealing damage at quick bursts. They are correct. This thing offers a 50% firing speed bonus, has minimal knockback, so it's not like the Force of Nature where it's going to shoot your target across the map, and it doesn't have a damage penalty. Sure, it only has 2 shots, but you could do up to 208 damage in rapid succession. And this weapon offers a 25% reload speed bonus, so it's ready quite quickly. Then you have an extra 5 jumps on top of that. It's insane. This weapon is phenomenal. Depending on who's using it, it could either be better or about the same as the scattergun. For me, it's a low S tier weapon. Trivia. When this thing was released, in the, you guessed it, Uber update, it worked a little bit differently. You may have noticed the Criticola strap to the bottom. Yeah, this weapon, when fully charged, used to grant you 8 full seconds of mini crits. The best part? The height meter used to charge by just running around. Now, when the weapon released, it would automatically activate upon filling the meter, but this could easily be bypassed by pulling out your secondary or melee right before it's full, and then pulling out your primary when it's ready to use. And it did insane damage. It wasn't until December of 2013 that the weapon was changed to pretty much what it is now, with the 5 extra air jumps instead of mini crits and the ability to activate at your leisure when the meter is full, using your alt attack key, whatever that is, binded for you. The only thing that has changed since then is it still had the mechanic where running around the map would fill the meter, or, as I should say, running around spawn, as most scouts did. It was in the Meet Your Match update of 2016 that the weapon was changed to needing to deal damage in order to fill the meter instead, 350 damage to be precise. Also some other interesting little details I might as well add on to the end. Because this thing used to mini crit, it had a no random crits attribute added, though in February of 2014 it was silently changed to allow for random crits again. So there was a short period where it still had the 5 extra jumps, but also didn't have the ability to random crit. So, I mean, with it or without it, it doesn't really matter. And finally, this one's unconfirmed, but I'm going to tell you anyway. According to the wiki, early concepts of the Soda Popper had a bonk can strapped beneath the weapon instead of a Criticola can. You could kind of vaguely see this in the concept art, though I'm not 100% sure. I was unable to find any concrete evidence, so take this with a grain of salt. All the stuff I said before that, starting at the no random crits and before, is 100% true though. The Sauna Stick, added February 3rd, 2011. Just like the Sharpened Volcano Fragment, this weapon is just not good. It is so niche and rarely ever worth using. If you don't have a Pyro on your team or a Cowmangler Soldier, one of the main draws of this weapon is obsolete. It works in the reverse as well. If there's no Pyro or Cowmangler Soldier on the other team, the other upside is obsolete. If there's neither, the weapon is a straight downgrade. It's not all that good. D tier. Trivia. Like the Sharpened Volcano Fragment, it is a promotional item for the game Rift. Mentioned in the Sharpened Volcano Fragment portion, both these weapons were intended to be reskins of normal weapons that are already in the game. The Sun on a Stick would have been the Boston Basher's reskin. 3. This weapon was quite odd and has quite a weird history. and it's for the most part worse than it is now. The original stats were kind of weird. After it was changed from the Boston Basher reskin, the original stats were a 35% damage bonus with the downside of a 45% damage penalty against non-burning enemies. Buildings would have increased damage done to them. This made the base damage 26 and 47 against burning enemies, which is lower than the current 78. Though, the damage bonus didn't take into account critical hits, so if you managed to crit versus a burning enemy, the stun on a stick could deal up to 142 damage. This was changed on February 7th. On February 7th, the weapon was changed to 100% mini crit versus burning enemies, though now it had a 15% damage penalty. The base damage was up by 4 from 26 to 30, but would now deal 41 damage versus burning enemies, 90 if you managed to crit. In the Hatless update of 2011, it was changed to pretty much what it is now, dealing crits versus burning enemies for a 25% damage penalty, period. The base damage is now 26 again, and the crit damage is 78. Though it wouldn't be until Meet Your Match in 2016 that it would get its fire resistance while active bonus. The Winger, added June 23rd, 2011. Yeah, the Uber update, of course. The Winger is a utility item meant to be used for either finishing enemies off, or used to scale slightly higher ledges and cavities with the jump height bonus. Personally, I don't see the Winger used all that much, but it isn't bad. Rather situational with a far less immediate use. C tier. Trivia. The Winger didn't actually come out with the plus 25% jump height bonus. That was added in July of 2013. The original draw of this weapon was the damage bonus. That's it, that was the original point of this weapon. Though it didn't get much use then. Also, here's some cool concept art. I don't really have much to say about it. It would have had a slightly different design, I guess. Kinda cool. The Wrapped Assassin, added December 15th, 2010. The Wrapped Assassin is a fun melee to run, but it isn't all that practical the majority of the time. It could be a great pair with something like the Flying Guillotine to do great loads of burst damage, but apart from that, it's just mediocre at best. C tier. Trivia. According to the description of the weapon, the bauble travels at a cool 90 miles per hour, but when actually converted from game speed into real measures of unit, it is closer to 128 miles per hour. Damn. The Wrapped Assassin has been mostly unchanged since its release. The only things that have been changed was a splash effect was added, so if you slightly miss, you may be able to deal some chip damage, which is, I guess, better than nothing, though it still can't cause bleed and it doesn't do much. The recharge rate was decreased from 10 seconds to 7.5 seconds, 25%, which allows you to use the ornament more often. And finally, the base damage was increased by 1 whole damage, from an average of 11 to an average of 12. The reason I use the word average is because random damage spread was a big thing back in the day. I believe on the wiki it is listed at 10.5, but obviously you can't deal 10.5 damage in TF2, so just rounding it up to 11 most of the time. Currently, if you kill someone with the bubble directly, it will display the same icon as the Sandman on a direct kill. Though, there was a plan for it to have its own kill icon, and it looked like this. The only difference between this and the Sandman icon is obviously the object that's being hurled at the back of their head. And finally, if you hit someone at long range, about 1,408 hammer units, the bubble will crit. This is listed in the weapon stat description, but just in case you didn't know. That's the video. I hope you guys like this format. I'll be releasing one of these a month until we get through all 9 classes. I believe that means Spy will be last, and that video will be coming out in October. That's it. Catch you guys next time.